Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Transformers and Universal Monsters crossover, Draculus, of course based on Dracula. And what better figure to kickstart the month of Halloween other than Draculus himself. Now this particular figure I imagine is going to be in fact the first of many Universal Monsters crossovers, and I'm actually really excited to see as to what Hasbro do with this. I'm really hoping that we can in fact actually get Frankenstein, as that would be so awesome. But taking a look here at the package, it looks really impressive. You can see we've got a fantastic piece of artwork there of Draculus. We've got Dracula and Transformers collaborative logo, the Universal Monsters logo there at the top. As we actually take a look here, you can see Transformers and Dracula 90th anniversary. As we turn our attention here to the side, once again another image there of Draculus, and then just spinning our attention to the back of the box. This figure, for those of you who don't know, is in fact a heavy retool, or I believe just essentially a repaint of Mindwipe with a new color deco, a cape, as well as a brand new head sculpt. And as we actually turn our attention here to the side of the box, you can see that this is in fact sort of designed to be, I believe it's a VHS tape. These particular tapes way before my time, but if you do in fact actually slide this out, you can see that it does slowly begin to reveal Draculus himself, looking actually really impressive here in the package. And as we just spin around here to the back, you have indeed got the tape of Dracula, looking really impressive. I personally would have actually loved this to have been almost stylized like a coffin. It would have made perfect sense considering this is in fact actually housing Draculus himself, but really nice attention to detail by the looks of things on this figure. You can see the blaster, a claw weapon, the main figure himself, as well as the cape accessory. So with all that being said, that just about wraps it up here for the very nice packaging. Without further ado, let's crack open Draculus and see what this figure has in store for us. And so here we have Draculus cracked open and out of the packaging, and the figure actually surprisingly has turned out pretty awesome. Now when this was first revealed, many of you will know that I was rather let down that Hasbro was simply basing this on a very old Titans Return figure, but actually having him in hand, and of course considering that Mindwipe transformed into a bat, I think this was probably the best basis to actually base this guy on, as I think Scourge maybe would have been slightly unusual, especially when we actually transformed him into the boat mode. So I do think that Mindwipe was a very good basis for this guy, and I have got to be honest and say that I think the color deco, some of the mold changes that they have in fact actually made to him, as well as the overall presence that this guy just exudes, is just so cool. Now before we take a look at Draculus himself, we'll very quickly go over a few of his accessories. So included, of course, we do get this blaster. I do believe this is exactly the same that we got packaged with Mindwipe. This time it's been cast out of black plastic, but the attention to detail, especially the paintwork here towards the barrel, looks fantastic. You can see a really nice silver as well as red fade going on, and it looks really awesome. It definitely complements the character incredibly nicely. And we also do get included that bladed weapon that too also came with Mindwipe. We will see this more when we actually get him transformed into the bat mode, but you can see we've got two cannons here as well as a claw, and can in fact actually implement this here into Draculus in robot mode, but we'll touch base more with that in just a second. Of course, the major accessory that he comes with is now the addition of this clothed cape. Now initially I wasn't a huge fan of this. I actually don't really like clothed goods on figures, especially deluxe classes, as they are very small, but I think for the most part this has actually turned out really nice. You can see you could definitely get Draculus into some very cool poses, and I really hope that I'll be able to showcase that off at the beginning of the review. But just taking him here off the display stand, you can see that the actual cape itself is harnessed via this peg here in the back, and you do in fact actually have to thread the wings through this particular component. It's completely removable, and for the purposes of the review I'll just very quickly demonstrate that. So you do just want to sort of flex these rubbery wings. We can then detach this section here and just detach this, and that is very simplistic to actually take off. And there we've got the base Draculus figure himself. Now taking a closer look here at the details, I think the overall design looks fantastic, incredibly faithful to the artwork that we've got on the actual front of the box. It looks really impressive. I love the paint scheme, and the face sculpt too is wicked. Now this entire component that you're seeing at the top, including this very awesome collar, is indeed a complete brand new sculpt. So sadly Draculus does not possess the headmaster gimmick that we saw on Mindwipe. You can't even remove this guy's head if you wanted to, as it is now in fact actually a ball joint, and this entire component that does attach onto the basis of this is a complete brand new sculpt. So it is nice to see that they did go the extra mile and didn't essentially just give us a headmaster, but you can see amazing attention to detail where this face piece is concerned. Of course, very cybernetic and Cybertronian in terms of design, and I think the paintwork is exquisite. We've got this really nice gunmetal here for the brow. You can see some nice silver ears, and you can in fact actually pick out the fangs protruding from the mouth there of Draculus, looking really cool. It would have been awesome if they could have done some retooling to this section, especially as on the actual front of the box it does give you the impression that Draculus is supposed to have this almost crest slash badge, but sadly the actual figure himself doesn't possess that, mainly simply down to the fact of this being a hinge joint. But still, it would have been nice if they could have slightly altered the sculpt of this. But you can see in regards to the detail, the wings look really impressive, really nice attention to detail going on for these. You can see the arms all look great. I do like how they have in fact actually painted these collar sections in this almost creamish white, and the hands do appear to be an actual downside of the open hands that we've got with Scourge. So it would stand to reason that the upcoming sweep does also have that hand. As you can see here, we've got both the left and the right possessing this, so literally they are just the downsides of the Scourge and Sweep mold. But the actual sculpt work is really, really impressive. You can see there the claws looking fantastic, completely picked out in metallic silver, and I think they look really, really awesome. And then as we just take a look here towards the torso region, once again, fantastic paintwork going on for this figure. Some paint bleeds, which is slightly unfortunate, but luckily, considering the package you can in fact actually open to reveal Draculus, you will be able to actually see on shelves and in store as to whether or not your figure has got good QC. As we turn our attention here down to the legs, exactly the same as what you would expect with Mindwipe, although I think the sculpt as well as the overall design of these actually complements the character very nicely. And then finally, as we just flip here to the back of the figure, you can clearly see the bat head, but overall I definitely think it looks really, really awesome. Now as we get down to articulation, the head, seeing as it's now on a ball joint, can look up, down, tilt side to side very slightly. Mainly it's hindered due to the collar piece, but it can of course also look left to right, and you can also see some fantastic detailing there for those ears. The arms are on ball joints, so can rotate the full 360, hinge out to the sides, rotation here at the bicep. We do in fact get a double joint here at the elbow due to transformation. Sadly, no form of wrist rotation, but we do in fact actually get a rotation here at the waist, which is pretty cool. The legs can kick forwards that far, back to that far, out to the sides, rotation at the thigh, slightly past 90 due to the nature of the design, and finally the foot can pivot forwards and backwards, but sadly cannot rock side to side. So it would have been nice if they could have slightly altered this design. And something which I just have to bring up for the purposes of this review is that I'm not entirely sure whether or not it's because this figure is in fact a retool of Mindwipe, but the joints are incredibly loose, especially where the legs are concerned. It actually takes quite a considerable amount of time to get this guy standing up straight, as the feet too are also fairly loose. So it would have been nice if they could have maybe added some soft ratchet joints, but overall, in terms of an actual display piece and collaborative piece, I do think that overall this is definitely by far one of the better ones that we've seen from Hasbro and Takara. Here for a very quick comparison, to be quite honest, I didn't really know what character to compare Draculus against, as we don't really have many figures in the collection that resemble this guy, but I thought the closest would be Scourge, just as his design is vaguely vampire-esque, but you can see that he's most certainly still a deluxe class in regards to scale. But I definitely think a really, really cool figure, and once again, actually looking at these guys through the camera, I do definitely think the Mindwipe was probably the best bet to go, as I really cannot think as to what they would come up with in terms of an alt mode to actually give Scourge if they were to have based him on that guy. And just to very quickly showcase him actually wielding the blaster, you can see he holds it with absolute ease, which is great to see, and you can in fact actually bring in this almost arm blade. You can either have him hold it via the 5mm port, or personally I actually like to peg it here into the side of the arm, so you could definitely have him slaying some Autobots if you were so inclined to do so. But just to demonstrate that sadly the actual ankles on this guy are incredibly loose, you can see that he really doesn't want to stand up all that much at all, so it may become a little tedious to actually pose him. But once you do get him into a pose, I've got to be honest and say that Draculus looks killer. Really an awesome looking collaborative piece. So turning to transformation, for those of you who have transformed Mindwipe, you'll know exactly what to expect with this guy for the most part. So to begin with, if you have got the cape installed, you are just going to want to detach this here and leave that off to the side. You'll then want to actually come here to the wrists, fold these into the hollow cavities, and repeat the same process here. For this side, you'll then want to lift these arm joints up, as the bat wings are in fact actually going to rotate around, and you can see this tiny little tab that these will in fact almost actually soft click into place with. So just come here to this side and repeat the same process, just snap that there into place. We can then take the head here, completely disengage this, and essentially just rotate that there to the back. Spin your attention here to the upper section of the figure, so where the legs are. For this particular segment, you are going to want to hinge these sections here around, come here to the back, open out the wings, and essentially just completely open these sections up. Take the foot, hinge that to the back. We can then rotate here. Personally, I like to try my best to get the smaller pin actually facing forwards, so rotate here, and you can see that we've got a slot there that should in fact peg into this tab, so just snap that there into place. Of course, repeat the exact same process here for this side of Draculus. Just peg that section in there, rotate here, and just clip that into place. We can then take the head, and we've got a tiny, almost minute tab here on the actual underside of the head that should slot into this groove. So just bring this here up and over and actually snap that there into place. And for some finishing touches, you are essentially just going to want to fold the legs in just like so, rotate there at the hinge joint, and as we just spin our attention here to the back, you can see some tabs that should shoot into those slots, so just peg them in there. snap that section there into place, and there you more or less have Draculus fully transformed up into his pretty awesome bat mode, especially now with the brand new paint apps. Now, we can bring in some of the accessories such as the blaster and this piece, and much like you could with Mind Wipe, you can combine these two weapons here. You can take this claw, fold this in, and this is essentially just supposed to peg into this port that we've got going on and almost act as an almost tail here for Draculus. Personally, I don't think it looks the best, so 9 times out of 10 I will set it here off to the side, and I'll bring the cape in later on in the review, as I do want to show off the details. Firstly, you can see the actual bat head sculpt looks awesome. Now, it would have been great if they could have slightly retooled this, much like they did with the bot mode head, to actually give us a rotating head, but nevertheless, you can see some really nice looking sculpt work going on for this. I think the attention to detail where the red paint ups are concerned, as well as the silver there for the teeth, looks fantastic. You can still, of course, open and close the jaw if you were so inclined to do so. As we take a look here towards the wings, the red paint effect looks fantastic. You can see the black that bleeds into the red. It looks so well done. Honestly, they've done a fantastic job. You can also see the claws here of the bat sculpted in. And as we take a look here towards the torso, we've got this transparent red plastic. Honestly, I think this would have been a great opportunity for them to have perhaps actually created an almost tomb for Draculus. So if they would have actually gone ahead and made him a headmaster, and that headmaster would have converted into a smaller version of Dracula, you could have placed him in here and had this as an almost coffin. But nevertheless, you can see here for the foot design, I don't think this looks too bad at all. Once again, some nice looking detail, and as we just spin our attention here to the back, it is fairly kibbly, but what to expect from a deluxe class. And now if we just bring in the cape for this, you are in fact going to want to flip it upside down, and to be honest, this is an absolute nightmare to peg in when you've got him in the bat form. So you're going to want to hook that section over and then just thread the wings through the slots. So snap that one in there, and then repeat the same process here with this side. So thread that one through, and then with this you can see we've got some cutouts. These are in fact actually going to hook over the tip of the wings, and of course repeat the exact same process here with this side, and essentially that is Draculus in bat form utilizing the cape. Now, I actually don't like it. As you can see, there's a lot of excess cape here that, to be honest with you, you can't really do all that much with. You can try your best to neaten it up, and to be fair, from the front it doesn't look too bad, but definitely not the best in my personal opinion. You could also, I guess, flip this forwards, but then you've once again got a heck of a lot of excess cape, so unless you were to really drape this over the wings, it definitely doesn't look the best. So I do tend to just more than likely set this off to the side when I do have this guy transformed into the bat form, but it is nice that it is something that you can do. And just very quickly going over the wing articulation, of course you can fully extend them, or you can in fact actually hinge them in due to the nature of the transformation. So, some final thoughts here for this Transformers and Universal Monsters crossover, Draculus. Overall, I definitely think that it's a really nice looking figure. In terms of robot mode, I think this guy looks fantastic. They've taken a very old mold and actually spiced it up, in my opinion. This is by far the best reissue that we've gotten of this mold so far, and I really do think they've put it to great use. I think the robot mode head sculpt looks great. The modifications made in order to actually make the collar around the neck in bot mode I also think looks fantastic, and the color scheme is just exceptional. I'm always a huge fan of black repaints, and this guy is definitely a prime example of a fantastic black and red repaint. He comes with some pretty cool accessories. I also like the modifications made to the hands. They suit the character fantastic, honestly, so much better than if they were to have just gone with the original Mind Wipe hands. And I think the cape too, for the most part, is pretty awesome. As mentioned beforehand, I'm not really a huge fan of clothed goods, but I definitely think this one's been fitted fairly nicely to the character, and as hopefully showcased at the beginning of this review, you can definitely get him into some extraordinary poses with that cape. I also like the transformation, very simple and effective, and the bat mode also looks for the most part pretty awesome, and considering that this really is the only other Transformer out there that can convert into a bat, I can completely understand as to why Hasbro and Takara decided to go with this mold for the actual Draculus collaboration. So overall, I do definitely recommend this figure if you are in fact into these crossovers. This guy is a little more expensive here in the UK. I believe he's double the price of a regular deluxe, and is he worth it? Well, it really just comes down to personal preference. I, for one, actually really love these crossovers. Of course, they have in fact actually had to acquire the Draculus license, and considering this is a part of the Universal Monsters, we'll no doubt see many more of these characters in the future, and that definitely does make me super excited. As I mentioned, I do like these crossovers, and how awesome is it to actually have some of these horror villains into the Transformers collection? I think it's a super interesting idea. So with all that being said, I do think this guy's great. It would have been great if we could have got some slightly tighter joints, but nevertheless, I guess that's just hit and miss. Maybe your copy will be slightly better in regards to tolerance. I would love to know down in the comment section below on what you guys think of this Dracula. Shall you be adding it to your collection, or will you be giving it an easy miss? I would also love to know what you thought of the review, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.